Hello and welcome to our daily assurance devotions. I'm so glad that you're here today as we continue to stay connected spiritually, although we cannot be together physically. And as we go into our devotion today, I wanted to give some background real quickly. I have a feeling that as you continue to go through this time of self-distancing or social distancing, and self-isolation and things like that, that you start to kind of maybe even get a little irritated. Anybody like that? I admit I do. I get more easily irritated. Maybe if something makes me kind of angry or upset, maybe I get angry or upset a lot quicker. Because at some point you feel like you just can't take this anymore. You know, it's just too much. And I want you to know two things. Number one, that's normal. It's understandable. We are humans. It's hard sometimes. We were not meant to live in isolation. We were not created to be living on islands, for lack of a better term. But yet here we are in many ways having to do this. But we're having to do this not only because of what is being asked of us, but we are having to do this because we believe, at least as followers of Christ, we do it out of a spirit of love, right? We've talked about this before in previous devotions, that we are doing this out of a spirit of love and compassion, especially for those who are most vulnerable, right? And that this is a sacrifice we are making on behalf of the greater good. And this is something Christians have believed for a long time, that we should do this, that we should engage in things like this. And I'm not pretending to have all the answers on this and how should move forward on this, but I do know that our spirit is in the right place, that we are trying to love other people. And that's what I want to talk about today, because although I find myself getting irritated, I also find God coming and checking me and saying, hey, now wait a minute. Are you acting out of a spirit of love? I know you're frustrated. I know you're angry. I know that your son is driving you nuts, right? But are you acting out of a spirit of love? And I have to check myself. I have to remind myself to do my best to love others. That includes those closest to me, and that includes those outside my walls as I continue to social distance from others. To not turn this into a time of constant complaining, to not turn this into a time of resentment, but to do my best, even when it's hard, to love. And so what I want to do is I want to read a scripture to you that is extremely popular in our culture, and many of you maybe even use it in your weddings, right? It's from Paul's letter to the Corinthians, 1 Corinthians chapter 13. And the main section is 13:4 through 7, which many of you know, and we're going to read in just a second. But I want to give you some of the intro into that before we do that as well, to help you understand where Paul is going with this. Because while this is often used for weddings, and that's appropriate, Susanna and I used it in our wedding as well, it speaks far beyond marriages. It's definitely applicable to marriage, but it's also important for all of life. And so I want to read this to you real quick. It comes from first starting right before chapter 13 at the end of chapter 12. Paul says this. Listen to this. This is beautiful. He says, "And now I will show you the most excellent way." I'm going to show you what it means to live in the most excellent way, the best way possible. And then he says this starting in chapter 13, verse 1. He says, "If I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. That if I speak in the tongues of men or angels, if I have all the wisdom of the world and of heaven, but I do not do it in a spirit of love, if I don't show love to others as best I can, all people hear are sounds, right? They don't see love, they don't hear love, they only hear and see what isn't love, right? That there's no point, right, in being right if you aren't good, right? Right and good go together in a spirit of love." He goes on to say, "If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and I have faith that can move mountains, but I have not love, I am nothing." That love is the essential ingredient to everything. "If I give all I possess to the poor and surrender my body to the flames, but have not love, I gain nothing." That it wasn't done out of a spirit of love, then it must be done out of a spirit of vanity, right? And then he says those famous words. "Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It is not rude. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. And then I love what he says at verse 8. He says, love never, ever fails. Love never fails. Now, years ago, I did a sermon series called Love Divine, and we talked about this particular passage, among other passages dealing with love, especially the divine love that comes from God and then requires us to go into the world and love others. But as you feel isolated in this situation, and then you start to maybe feel irritated and angry or resentful or frustrated or whatever it may be, right? Whatever is going through your heart, whatever you're struggling with, as you feel those things, I ask that you then go to God, as I have, because I've struggled with it as well, and lean on love, God's love for us, and then ask God to empower that love to you to give to others, especially those who may be irritating you, right? It may be hard to be cooped up at times. You may be frustrated. You may want to yell at somebody, or you may want to get on Facebook or Twitter or whatever and start lashing out at somebody else and using in a spirit of anger, taking out your frustration on others, whether it be leaders or friends or relatives or someone famous, whatever it may be. You may be have this desire inside of you to go out and lash out. And so then ask yourself, I ask you to ask yourself, am I doing this out of a spirit of love? Because love, as Paul says, never fails, ever. What I've done in the past when it comes to this particular passage is this. I've said to ask myself and for you to ask yourself, can I feel in my name for love in 13, 4 through 7, can I put my name in there instead of love, Lonnie, and complete it without laughing? So that's what I'm going to do to you now. You ready? Lonnie is patient. No, already laugh because right now I don't feel very patient. Lonnie is kind. Sometimes I feel like I'm kind, and sometimes an irritation rises. I don't know if I'm being kind. Lonnie does not envy. Lonnie does not boast, and Lonnie is not proud. Well, yeah. Lonnie is not rude, and Lonnie is not self-seeking. Lonnie is not easily angered. Oh, Lonnie keeps no record of wrongs. Man, this is hard. This is hard. Lonnie does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. I believe in that one. I do okay with that one. But then listen, this one's hard for me. It says, I put Lonnie always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. I want to believe that I'm doing that all the time, but I admit that when times get tough, sometimes I feel like I am failing. I'm not persevering. I'm not keeping hope alive. And when I do that, at least I try to go back to God and lean on that love. Because I can tell you that these are times, unique and challenging times, where we must practice love. It's often easy to love others, whether it be those closest to us, those we don't even like, when things are going well and life is going according to our plans, or at least overall is going according to those plans. Love seems, well, rather easy in those times. But I would argue that while we should love at all times, we should love even when it is most difficult, when it is hard, when things are not going according to plan. In fact, I would say this, that it's not really just even when, it's especially if it's hard, especially if it's difficult, especially if we want to lash out, especially if we want to get irritated, especially if we want to get on Facebook and call out somebody and blame someone. That's when love is most powerful, because it overwhelms our soul and reminds us that God is in control. And it reminds us that our job, especially if difficult things are happening, not just even when, but especially if, our job is to love. And so my challenge to you today is to ask yourself that question: can you recite 13, 4 through 7 and insert your name for love in there and complete it without laughing or smirking or sighing? If you can, great. But if you can't, prayerfully reflect with God on how you can improve on the things that you're struggling with. Now is the time for us to love. Now is the time for us especially this time, to be a reflection of Jesus in this world. God bless you all. I'll see you tomorrow.